So good. This is a big eye needle. So let's start with the super duper basics. So this is a big eye needle. You're going to have one of these in your kit. If you've never used a big eye needle before, they're brilliant.
I love them.
You can use them with any type of thread, really. So we use them a lot in Kumihimo. But what it is you have two pieces of wire and they're soldered together at either end. They are pointy at both ends, so do be careful.
Very, very pokey.
Yeah. So to get it open, you just sort of like crack it with your fingernail. Like so. And then you can thread your needle. So it's really easy. You don't have to...
I always like to stick my finger all the way through it so that it remains a little bit popped open. Makes it easier to find the...
So I do that sometimes too, but that does deform your needle.
It does.
And I actually really like a beautiful, crisp, fresh out of the package needle. But
yeah, but I'm not you.
You are not me.
I like a bent up, been used on 1,000 different projects, and is a well-loved and abused needle.
All right. Should I start this one in the middle, or should I start one from the beginning first?
I'd go ahead and start one from the beginning first, just...
From the beginning. All right, let's get some...
Yeah.
Let's get some beads here.
Because, I mean, that's where everyone's going to be beginning.
What? They're going to begin at the beginning?
Yep.
I feel like that's like a scene out of Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? About beginning at the beginning? No.
I don't know about that, but I know that there's a game show on YouTube that I like to watch that uses that line.
What show?
The only way to begin is by beginning.
Is it Tirzu?
No, that's actually.
Oh.
Wait, no, not actually.
Actually, it's not actually?
Yeah, it's their other game show. The one that they change the rules every single time they play the game show.
Oh, I don't think I watched that one. I just threw my thread. All right.
No throwing the thread.
All right, so can you guys hear this? I think my mic will pick it up. I'm stretching the thread.
Going, doing, 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 doing.
Yeah, so when your thread first comes off the spool, it's really curly. So you want to give that a little stretch so that, one, it's easier to work with when it's not so curly, and two, that relaxes it so that your thread doesn't stretch out later. So step one, we're going to pick up 2 of our main beads.
It's the only time you pick up 2 main beads.
Excellent point. It's the only time we're going to pick up 2 beads. And
no, 2 main beads.
It's the only time you're going to pick up 2 beads and only 2 beads.
Okay, fact.
There we go. So let's stay in frame here. Scoot these guys. I want to just see if I can... Haha, look, I can just move the entire tray. There we go.
Cheating.
No, it's not. So leave yourself a comfortable tail. I have about 6 inches over here. And I'm not going to use a bead stop or anything because you would only need it for a moment.
For about 30 seconds.
Yeah. So next, I'm going to pick up 5 of my seed beads. There we go. I have 5 of my seed beads on there, and then I'm going to pick up...
From this distance away, I can't tell if you're working on one of the petite ones or if you're working on a classic one.
It's petite.
Ah.
But yeah, on camera too, you probably can't really tell, because the proportions are exactly the same.
Well, yeah, that's the way
That's
I designed it.
part of the beauty of it. All right, so I picked up 5 seed beads, and then 1 of my medium beads, and then 5 more seed beads. There we go, we can see that on camera there. Now, I'm gonna sew back through my first 2 big beads. And when I do, that pulls that embellishment set that I just picked up, the seed beads and the medium bead, right along the edge. Ta-da! Also, at this point, my beads aren't going to fall off of the thread. If I were to pull really hard, I could still pull the thread through, but nothing's going to fall. I can pick it up and it won't fall. All right, so then we're going to do it again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are you laughing at my counting?
No, I'm laughing at the video of you bouncing the thing up and down to show that they won't just fall off. Now you do need to give it a tug to make sure they won't fall off. I mean, if you had it really loose, they could slide back.
No, but you don't want to give it a tug. If you give it a tug, you could just pull it off until you've done your next one.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've picked up my next embellishment set. So that's my 5 seed beads, 1 medium, 5 seed beads. And now I'm going to sew through these first 2 big beads again. Same direction. Again. So pulling through. And now I'm going to spread them out so that I've 1 on either side. I'm going to zoom in on that. Now, I have a really important point to share with you. During the demo, I'm going to keep setting the beadwork on the tray so you can see it. But if I were actually just stitching this by myself and not for an audience, I would keep the beadwork in my hand. The whole time I'm working, I would be holding everything in my hand. It keeps your tension better controlled. It keeps things from flopping around. I don't usually set the stuff down in between steps. So keep in mind, I'm only laying things down on the mat so you can see them. And I recommend that when you're stitching, you also keep your beadwork in your hand. So we have now started our pattern. And like we said earlier, only the first time do you pick up 2 big beads. After that, when we move forward, we're just going to pick up 1 big bead. And we're going to let that slide right on down to the others. Now we're going to embellish again. And it's the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we pick up a medium bead, and then we do 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right.
How many languages can you count to 5 in?
I don't know. We'll see. Not that many. All right. Say what you're doing, Rebecca. Don't get distracted by counting. All right, so I've picked up my embellishment set, and now I'm going to sew through the 2 big beads that are closest to the working end of the bracelet. So first time around, there were only 2 beads, so we didn't really have to decide which 2 beads we're going through. Now that there are 3, we want the 2 that are closest to the open end of the project. And we always sew through everything the same direction.
I always like to think of it as you count back, you take 2 steps forward, or 2 steps back.
We'll come back to that. You think about it, and we'll try it again in a minute.
I'm trying to remember the way I used to say it. It's been a while since I've taught this class.
I know. All right, so take a look at my new embellishment set. See how it's sitting on top of the embellishment set from before? I like to put mine on top. It doesn't matter if you put it on top or underneath, But you do need to be consistent. You need to stack them up, right? Because we want it to look like this as we build. All right, so here they're underneath, here they're on top. It doesn't matter, but they all have to be going the same way. All right, so there's one side, and then we do it again. Il, I, sam, sa, o. That's Korean. Hana, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯. That's the other way to count in Korean. They have 2 sets of numbers.
I was about to say, they have 2 sets of numbers?
Yes. Yeah, it's given Alex a lot of grief right now. She's learning Korean. She's like, what should I learn first? Well, you need to learn pure Korean numbers for counting things that are only a few of. And then you need to learn Sino-Korean numbers for all the money. So learn them both. There we go. Let's zoom in on that. So now you can see we've done the embellishment set on both sides. Do it for me in Japanese. All right, let me see how far I can go.
Come on, you should know Japanese.
I know. It's just there. All right, so next though, we have to move on. We have to grow our project, so we're going to pick up a big bead, just one of them. All right, Japanese. Ichi.
I think it's each ni.
Ni. San. Shi. Ichi, ni, san, shi. Is it go or rock?
She, go.
Go. Okay. Go. All right. That's as far as I can count in Japanese. And what else have we done? Oh, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. All right, so I've picked up my embellishment set again. Here we go. And again, we're gonna put that on the outside of 2 of our big beads, and it's always the 2 big beads closest to the working end of the project. Hazel says we're right on go, by the way, for number 5 in Japanese.
You must get their comments faster than I do. Because I'm only watching the broadcast. And her... Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so I have them on... I have comments on my monitor up here, and then... I'm not sure what's on my phone right now. I mean, I can see the video, but I have it turned sideways so I don't see the comments over there. All right. So you guys get the idea. I'll do one more of these, and then we can talk about some other skills you're going to need for this project. Because this really just goes on and on, you know, rinse and repeat. Do you know French numbers?
You're talking to the person who
That's all I
barely knows
got.
English.
That's all I got. I can't actually count in that many languages. I'll have to work on that. Numbers aren't usually one of the first things I learn. Because it's so easy to just like point or write down if you need numbers.
Or use your fingers.
Yeah, especially for 1 through 5. That's easy peasy. Lisa's question, will there be written instructions with the kit? Absolutely. The kit will have written instructions.
Always has written instructions.
Yep, this
I
is
think
just...
there might instructions too.
I don't think so, love.
They aren't diagrams, they're photos?
They're diagrams, but I made those.
Oh.
We took this to the gem show a couple years ago.
I remember that.
All right. Ta-da! All right, let's talk about adding thread. So, let's see. Oh, was there a question about how long the thread was, Richard?
Yep.
Okay, so how long of a thread should you work with? So the instructions will say something like on a comfortable length of beading thread. I would say that a comfortable length of beading thread is up to your full wingspan, right? So hand to hand, that's a comfortable amount of thread. Any more than that, and it's too long, it tends to tangle, so we don't want that. So let's add some more thread to this piece that I have going already.
The little mini piece or the...
No, this big piece. Let's just add some more thread to it. It doesn't need more thread right now, but let's go ahead and put more thread on
cut it off 6 inches from there and then add the thread. And that's what I do whenever I need to demonstrate how to add thread.
Don't even really have to cut it off, but there it is. Cut it now. I've cut it. Aha! I'm out of thread. So time to put more thread on here. There are several different ways to add thread. Yeah.
One question I usually get when adding thread is, when do I add thread? And my rule of thumb is usually when it gets down to about 6 inches, you want to be thinking about adding thread.
First I got like this gray thread doesn't want to show up. Let me just real quick. You can see I got about 6 inches of thread left on here. So I think when to add thread kind of depends on what method you're using to add thread.
Also depends on your personality.
Also your personality. But I think more importantly and more concretely, it depends on the method you're going to use. So the method I'm going to show you right now is just tying on a completely independent piece of thread. We're going to tie it to the beadwork portion over here. We're not tying it just to this loose piece of thread. So that means you can have like 6 inches over here and that's fine. So I'm going to cut a new piece of thread. Twa is not trios. Don't you just love autocorrect? Autocorrect has a field day. You try to type in other languages, it gets cranky. Oops, what did I throw? Oh, shower curtain hook. Okay, so.
I'm ready to disassemble this.
Yeah, thanks. So here's my new piece of thread. Is this even gonna show up? Hey Richard, will you do me a favor?
Yep.
Will you hop in the other room and get a different color fuzzy mat?
Okay.
If you go into the classroom on the wooden table, there are a bunch of those small mats. Try to get one that's maybe like pink or green or something, because
Oh, we have green ones?
I think there might be a green one. But anyway, like
we do at home.
this gray thread is like the same exact color as my blue mat. And no one's gonna be able to see it.
Do you want me to bring some rat tail to show how you tie the knots? Just so that it's easier to see?
You can, but I'm not gonna be able to do it with rat tail for the knot I'm doing. So.
Okay, then I won't worry about it.
Be quick. Thank you.
Song and dance time.
Song and dance time. Ah! Oh my gosh, now we just have like autocorrect fails down here. Nancy. Oh, I've never had an autocorrect like that bad before. All right.
You get your choice.
I get my choice. Okay. I was hoping for a small one, but all right.
You said to be quick.
I did, that's why I told you where to look. Over on the wooden table.
Yeah. We have a lot of wooden tables.
No, we don't. We only have one wooden table in that whole room. And this doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Alright, next go get me a different color thread. Like orange or something. Is Alex still here?
Yeah.
Ask her where the thread is. Just give me some orange thread. Thank you.
Okay. Ah!
I love the drape butterfly stitch too. This is actually a good time to talk about that since we're pausing and waiting for better thread demo colors. Yeah, I love how slinky it is, and it's really nice as both a bracelet or as a necklace.
Anything else you need?
I don't know. This is what I need. Why are you handing me other things?
I thought that this would be a little bit thicker and easier to see on the screen.
I think you don't understand what I'm about to do, and you're offering suggestions that are unhelpful. Okay, here we go. Orange thread. Yeah, that shows up a little bit better. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my new orange thread and I'm going to tie it in between the big beads, a few beads back from where my project is currently open. So right here in between those two beads is where I'm going to put it. No, Susan, I can't use the white background because it'll overexpose.
The camera does not like the white background.
No, the camera really doesn't like a white background. I would have to reset all the exposure in order to actually film on white. Alright, let's unzoom just a little bit. Alright, so what I want to do is I'm going to sew underneath the thread that's in between these two big beads. There you go. You guys see that? So I'm just sewing underneath the thread. I'm not going in a bead at all. I'm just sewing underneath the thread. And I'm going to pull my new piece of thread through until I have about a 6-inch tail. Now I'm going to take my needle off. I'm going to take the two ends of my thread. All right, so there's a long side and a short side. I'm going to make a loop around my fingers. I'm going to pull both of these through. So I just made an overhand knot. So here's my overhand knot. I'm going to close that up and oh no, it's way over here. It's not a problem. I knew that was going to happen. So I'm going to take the two sides of my thread and pull them in opposite directions. And see how my knot's starting to move? Let me zoom in. So pulling, pulling, pulling. Stay in frame. Get down there. Get down there. Aha! There we go. So by pulling in opposite directions, the knot scooted down the thread and it's now boop, right in there, right in between those two beads. Now, I've got my really long side, that's the new piece of thread, and then there's this tail. It's orange, so you can tell that's my new piece of thread, but I'm not going to be using it, right? I just need to get rid of it. You can't cut it off right here, because then your knot's not going to be any good. So I'm going to put my needle on the short piece of my new thread, the orange side, and I'm going to sew into my beadwork away from the opened end of my project. I'm going to sew through these big beads. Sew through 2 of them. Okay, 3 of them. I just wanted to go through 3, and that's fine. see? I'm sewing through 3 of those big beads there. What is this caught on? Alright, sorry, I have to bring this closer to my face. It's caught on something. Oh, there we go. I got it.
I was going to ask, did you puncture the thread?
No. My thread wasn't as long as I thought it was, and I'm pulling on it, but nope, that's the end. Okay. Now, I'm going to tie a half hitch knot to end this part of my thread. So a half hitch knot is when I sew underneath the thread. So the thread that's coming through my big beads, I'm going to sew underneath that. So this is similar to how I started, right? Remember when I was sewing underneath the thread? So I go underneath the thread, and when I pull through, see how this little loop formed? I'm going to sew into that loop before it closes, and when I pull the rest of the way, that makes a half hitch knot around my central thread. So that's one knot. And I'm just going to sew through another one of these big beads, or 2, whatever it feels like doing. Sorry, I'll try to stay in frame. I'm really nearsighted and I usually bring this stuff right up to my face when I do it. There we go. I'm going to tie another half hitch.
I have never done it this way. This is different than how I do it.
How do you do it?
I usually just tie the one thread to the other thread. Like way out there, and then
You mean
start
like
sewing with the pair of threads.
with a surgeon's knot?
Yeah, using the traditional surgeon's knot.
Yeah, but if you mess up your surgeon's knot, it's too big to go through the 15s.
Also, if you don't do your surgeon's knot right,
It pulls
and
out.
it pulls out,
Yeah.
it always pulls out in a worse spot.
Yeah, so anyway, other options include a surgeon's knot that we were just discussing. But this, I think, is better for beginners for sure. And actually, in my own work, I've been using it. It's easier because you don't have that big fat knot that you're pulling through things. So anyway, this one is done. This was the tail of my new thread. So here's where it was attached, and then I did 2 half hitch knots in here somewhere, and now I can just cut that off and be done with it. And at the other end, so here's my new orange thread, and it's not where I need to be to resume stitching. So I'm just going to put my needle on that end. And then I'm going to sew through these big beads until I'm exiting the end of my project, ready to do more stitching. So now at the end of the project, you can see the orange thread and the gray thread. Those are both coming out the end. So the gray one, that's the old thread, and the orange thread is the new thread. So from here on out, you'll use the orange thread to pick up more beads and continue your butterfly stitch. And after you've gone down 3 or 4 beads, then you'll just finish off the tail, just like I did with the tail of my new thread. I'm just going to tie some half hitch knots and then get rid of it. So that's that. All right. I don't have a bead scoop or anything.
Nope.
All right, so is that all the important stuff?
Basically all there is to it until you get to the other end. And
Oh,
then
you
there's
took
attaching the clasp.
You took apart my other sample.
Oh,
I could have sewn the clasp with that. This one's not long enough to put a clasp on. Well, putting the clasp, I just won't tie a knot. Putting the clasp on is really easy.
oh, you could show the clasp attached to the other end.
It already has a clasp on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can show it, but I can't demo it. I'll sew it on here. You can take it off later if you don't want it on here. All right, so to put your clasp on, and it tells you this in the instructions, basically you're just gonna pick up on the loop side, and it's a little bit different, loop side versus bar side. So the bar side has a little bit more of a tail on it. Anyway, you're gonna pick up 3 beads. You're gonna go through your toggle and then pick up 3 more seed beads. Are instructions for adding the cord also included in the kit? No. The bead stitching instructions assume that you know how to add thread. It'll say add thread as needed. But I will make this, I'll keep this video up on our site so you can take a refresher look if you need to. All right, so I've picked up my seed beads, my toggle, and then some more seed beads. And then I'm gonna go into, let's do 2 of the big beads. And of course I have this old piece of thread there since we didn't finish that off. So see, there's our toggle on there. And basically you just need to sew through this a couple times. So the place where you're going to turn around is because you can't just turn back around and go straight up through the big beads because you will have undone the work you just did. You have to catch something. So I'm gonna sew back through this embellishment. Here, sorry, I'm trying to keep this in frame. I'm zoomed in too much. There we go. It's hard for me to stay in frame when it's super zoomed. All right, so I'm going to sew through my embellishment. So I'm going to go through my seed beads and that medium bead. Up through those seed beads. You generally can't do it all in one pass. Take as many passes as you need to get up there. All right, so now I've turned around and I'm back up to where my clasp is, so I can reinforce the thread path by sewing through it again, and then back down, and then over here, and back up. You want to sew through your toggle clasp at least 2 or 3 times. You know, to make sure that that's really nice and strong. So I'm going to set that aside. I think that was it, Richard. I think we did all the important stuff. I lost my needle.